Rock and roll. One of the first things that I tune into when I consider what's coming down the pike for next week is the lunar dance. I think that's a good jump off point to begin, because during this week we're going to have a full moon. That's not until the 10th, so Saturday of this next week, real early in the morning. It's going to look huge on the 9th, but there are other things going on the 9th. And one of the symbols of a moon, particularly of the full moon, might easily be able to be seen as the shape, the energy of the drum. I have chosen this place, Cedar Mountain Drums in East Portland, to meditate upon how does the drum work. One of the storylines that you might often hear spun out across and through time about the drum and about the shaman is that the shaman rides the drum in the journey process. It is a vehicle through which things can transpire, upon which we are opened to aspects of the living process that we might not generally be tuned into. So as we begin our consideration for this week, on Monday's T-square of the moon to the opposition between Jupiter and Mercury across the Aries Libra axis. Mercury, what is the technique of how we formulate our communications and our thoughts? Jupiter, how can we expand upon that? Mercury's in Libra. It's slowing down, basically almost to a crawl, as it gets ready to turn retrograde on Friday. Listen, what kind of information might you be curious to share with others that Mercury grinding to a halt in the Libra zone, opposing the Jupiter over there in Aries, that arena of the self, action, impulse, and energy, but going backwards as Jupiter retrogrades back toward the beginning of that Aryan zone. the T-square of that moon up there in Capricorn in 90 degrees aspect to each of those two planets might be asking us, are we clear on what it is our thoughts and our words may be inclined toward right now? Perhaps some caution might be required along this drum journey to invite those players, Mercury, Jupiter, and the moon, to join with us as we contemplate what is it that is on the table right now. And as we drift along these wavelengths, feel yourself. That's the moon. Feel yourself. Allowing your thoughts to not be small, to feel the impulse and the drive of life on this journey. Can you sense each of these drums at Cedar Mountain Drums in Portland seeking to speak out as we gather here for this next week's consideration? Let's take a look at the chart for this week. Here's that T-square that I was talking about for Monday. Moon up here at Capricorn, Mercury over here in Libra, and Jupiter retrograding back here in Aries. The thing about T-squares is they focus in on that planet that's in the middle, that moon sitting up here in Capricorn. What do you think? We just right now, actually today, the 3rd, this is the waxing quarter moon. I could go back, Saturday. This is when I found the time frame to sit down and, I think of, the delightful, absolutely exquisite marine layer foggy mornings that we've had over the last few days as such a welcome relief from the heat of the summer that we've been experiencing, and particularly for me in accomplishing the roofing project I am doing on my geodesic dome. I'm down to only one last section to go, which is the eastern side of the garage pushout from the driveway back to the front door entrance to my home. And being as it's relatively flat, I do have some things. There is a skylight, and I do have a lean-to roof built over the top of the front entrance door that I will have to dismantle in order to put the new roof on, but that's just part of the process. But let's tune into our Capricorn. Capricorn ruled by Saturn doing its retrograde dance here in Aquarius. Also a sign that it has rulership for and with. spinning the tail of Capricornian potential leadership along the Aquarian trajectory of what is there that's new out there that beckons my participation? How is the energy of what it means to be a leader entwined with the group process? Because in order for there to be successful leadership, taking into consideration as much as possible what it is that is in the best interest of the most is what true leadership actually best functions within. So that moon, you want to feel into that process, awakening, how is my communication with others? That Mercury in Libra at work, and this Mercury is slowing down. So it's like, it's not a rush type process. We're actually preparing this week for this next Mercury retrograde cycle, and being prepared for a Mercury retrograde cycle is the best way to actually facilitate the use of that Mercury retrograde energy. Not just get whooped up the side of the head like, oh my God, Mercury's retrograde, though most people often think Mercury is retrograde. And yet, that just is more of an indication that how we are formulating the energy of our thinking process is probably being spun in some fashion with energy signatures that we have tuned into that are not necessarily the clearest and resonant with the truest potential of what it is that we are about. It may seem like Mercury's retrograde, if that's the case, but when it does go retrograde, these are ideal times to actually hone in, focused energy on something that you're really very interested in, because you're the distractions that generally, empower, imbue, entwine themselves into our daily lives aren't functioning on the same level during a Mercury retrograde moment as they do generally. And this Mercury retrograde beginning in Libra means that perhaps, your mileage may vary, but perhaps when we're, thinking that we might be inclined to engage with others, well, we live on planet Earth. We're humans. We engage with others all the time, Mercury retrograde or not. So that is going to continue. But during this particular retrograde cycle of Mercury, it would be probably more beneficial to focus in on the listening aspect when we're actually sharing time with others, rather than trying to make bold statements, drive our point home with others. Because, Mercury's retrograde. It may not come out as clear as you had hoped. the slip of the tongue, the stumble over our words. These are Mercury retrograde concepts and are in play. But being ready for Mercury retrograde, my wife, who works at the computer store, and my son as well, would say, make sure that you have your information backed up before Mercury goes retrograde. Because trying to accomplish that once it shifts into reverse mode may not pan out as well as you had hoped. So prepared, I think, is the key for any Mercury retrograde cycle. You want to make sure that that information that is quite important to you to not lose is officially, expertly backed up. That's the bullet point of this particular Mercury retrograde. When I looked at all the things that were going on this week, also on Monday, we have an energy shift happening with Venus, the ruler of Libra. Well, the ruler of Libra, Venus, has just shifted from Leo into Virgo. So now we have Mercury in Venus's sign and Venus in one of Mercury's signs. This is called a mutual reception, though there are some caveats to just how that might be played out. This, probably the best way to perceive this is that the sun being in Virgo, one of Mercury's signs, is receiving its marching orders, so to speak, from Mercury, which is up there in Libra. Says that how I organize my thoughts and put things in meaningful context, Virgo. I should pay attention to the Libra perspective of what do others think about the way that I'm arranging these facts. Venus coming into Virgo right now as the ruler of Libra strikes up this a little bit more of an intense conversation between that mercurial factor and the Venus factor. And so it's highly likely in the earlier part of this week that we're going to run into situations when we're engaging with others where there's some unclarity, shall we call it, that is on the table as far as what needs to transpire between us. And between us is the key, because that is Libra's zone. So pay attention to it. And Venus, it isn't necessarily doing its happy dance when it's in Virgo. There's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into them. But I think one factor is that Virgo is kind of it's an individual way in which we facilitate as effectively as we possibly can, putting the pieces of energetic life together in a way that functions well for us as an individual. And Venus, as the ruler of Libra, says that, are you paying attention to the perspective that the other has? Or are you just trying to find that commonality of ground within your own matrix? And not necessarily caring overtly what other people's perspectives might be. You can kind of see the ground here gets a little bit squishy, and and Virgo's an earth sign. It really wants to, as in all earth signs, to have a firm foundation to work on. So you can kind of see that energy in play here, where our Virgo thoughts might need just a little bit more focus in order to facilitate just how we put those processes into action. Okay. It's Friday, just like that. We zip through the week. There were a lot of aspects that happened during the week. I'm not going to go into those. And I could spend hours if I wanted to go through all the aspects of everything that's happening. See this little white S right here down next to this Mercury sign? That means that Mercury has stopped moving forward. 8 degrees, 54 minutes. If we just go to the next day, you'll see that the S turns red. That means it's going retrograde still, 8 degrees, 54 minutes. So what this white S stands for is Mercury has stopped, big S, stopped going forward. And for all intents and purposes, that just kind of brings a focus to that particular degree of the zodiac and the mercurial considerations of how it is that we want to play that particular mercurial song. The Sabian symbol from Dane Rudger's An Astrological Mandala, which can be used as a divinatory tool, reads, this is for the degree where Mercury goes and stations to retrograde. 3 old masters hanging on the wall of a special room in an art gallery. That's the vision that the psychic Elsie Wheeler had back in the 1915 era. Keynote: the need to return to source during a confused search for new value in a chaotic society. Does that ring any bells? Might you be able to perceive that particular archetypal energy in play currently here amongst us humans on planet Earth? Further, it reads, there are always moments which focus in our minds the longing to re-ground ourselves in the great achievements of the past. The number 3 suggests completeness. Esoteric traditions speak of the threefold soul, or the 3 dimensions. Lost my place. The 3 fundamental rays of power, of love, wisdom, and of intelligence in action. Meditation, in its deepest sense, is a return to source, an attempt to re-identify oneself with one's archetypal essence of being, which is triune in manifestation. And now, after confused but challenging wanderings, to identify oneself consciously with this essence. The finer forms of one's culture provide the means to do this. The great moments of the collective past become an inspiration for new yet sound beginnings. The seed of tomorrow salutes the seed of yesteryear. This degree suggests that in the process of transfiguration, the presence of the greatest moments of the past is called upon, as Moses and Elijah were invoked in Jesus' transfiguration. The seed of the new day depends upon the seed of yesteryear for an experience of the cyclic continuity of spirit. This is the basis for the institutionalized ideal of apostolic succession, the Guru Ampara, an uninterrupted chain of gurus of Indian tradition. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Shades of years gone by, slipping through along the ethers of consciousness, from my world anyway. So, preparation for this next mercurial retrograde cycle. By the way, Mercury will go back into Virgo all the way back to 24 degrees, where it will turn direct on October 1st and continue its dance forward out of its retrograde moment. So that's a lot to take in, but astrology brings a lot. On this day, you can kind of see over here the moon at 20 degrees of Pisces, the sun at 17 degrees of Virgo, which means that if we consider the moon moves a degree every 2 hours, and this is basically just after the moon has been full, which will be early on Saturday morning, probably just a little after midnight, maybe around 2 o'clock in the morning. And full moon, here's that good time to recharge your batteries. And what I'm speaking about is that if you do any crystal work, energy, or have implements that you utilize for healing processes or anything like that, the full moons are ideal times to place your items where the light of the full moon can wash down and cleanse them of any impurities that they may have picked up during the last part of the cycle. And being as this is a full moon in Pisces, Pisces is the deepest and most profound spiritual energy signature of the entire zodiac. So this full moon that will be shining its energy down is carrying waves of presence that come from and through source. And that source energy is exactly what is required to revitalize any energetic process that you tune into and might utilize in the energy healing fields. So this full moon is an ideal time to release. One thing you can do also is to wash off your implements that you're allowing this energy rebirthing process to transpire within. Feathers, washing them, I don't know, but stones, rocks, crystals, your bowls. These can be excited with this energy uplift, and I'm telling you now to get this set in motion so that you don't forget on Saturday, since the day before Saturday, Mercury does go retrograde, and it does have a tendency often to befuddle our thoughts to such an extent that we might not entirely remember everything. Mark it on your calendar. Put that string around your finger. Make sure that you utilize this opportunity to imbue your tools with a life essence that is coming from source. Okay, that was Saturday. On Sunday, we have a dynamic trine aspect between the Sun at 18 degrees of Virgo and Uranus retrograde down here at 18 degrees of Taurus. Earth signs. Taurus shakes things up. And, well, actually, Uranus shakes things up. It just happens to be in Taurus. Earth, this is the first of the earth signs, and it has, Taurus has a connection to everything that is planetary in nature, that connective tissue of life substance that permeates everything on this planet. And Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius is actually modern ruler of Aquarius. It has that strong affinity to, stimulating opportunities for group energy to, strike off in new directions. And it may happen rather suddenly because that is how the Uranian energy attempts to awaken us to a larger, more inclusive perspective of what it means to be alive. It rattles the cage oftentimes because we're not ready for that kind of a sudden jolt to show up. But often that is exactly what's required to, get us out of any stupors that we may have slipped into in our zones of comfort. Can you feel that? Is that comfort that you are tuned into also tuned into your connection with all of life? Because if it's not, it should be. We are a part of everything as everything is a part of us. Uranus says, wake up. Pay attention to the things that are going on around you. This trine between that Sun in Virgo and Uranus down there in Taurus. Could there be an epiphany of insight from the Virgoan perspective of, that's the piece that I've been missing? It ties together loose ends that I've been trying to attempt to, see how they conjoined each other. To make this just a wee bit more interesting is that we're in the final phases of a Saturn in Aquarius, ruler of Aquarius, and Uranus down here in Taurus, having a strong affinity with Aquarius, square the actual waning final moments of the square that, they're traveling essentially about a degree apart. And they stay within this cycle and get the closest that they get is near the beginning of October when they're less than a degree apart. And then Saturn, when it goes direct in about the middle of October, will start to pull away from that particular square. And Uranus will continue on its retrograde journey until early in January, I believe, where it will finally go direct itself. But that's the end of that square tensions, but this is tensions with a caveat, in the sense that we're talking some Aquarian type energy. So it's more like there are questions that are sitting perhaps just beneath the surface of what's going on, that say, they're trying to pierce through that surface layer and awaken us to something else that is trying to put in an appearance, a percolation of life that beckons to us. Can you hear it? Can you feel that energy? My drum started to roll away. It felt the energy. Anyway, those are the dynamics of this next week that's coming into being. And once again, I would tune into that drum, the language of the journey, and all of its participants in this room of Cedar Mountain drums, saying, all of you, come, let's fly away. And at this point, thank you for your participation on this journey, and come on back home and be as tuned into all of life that you bring to focus. Thank you. See you next week.